Well, this is a bizarre turn of events. Trump is now publicly panicking. That comes in the form of him denying that he knows anything about, that he's associated with at all, that he knows anything about who's behind Project 2025, the plan that he will almost absolutely implement if he gets another term. And we'll talk more about what that plan is in this segment. We'll look at people calling him out for the absurdity of this denial. And then we'll talk about if the denial were true, that doesn't really matter either, and the threat remains the same. But here is Trump on Truth Social. I know nothing about Project 2025, he says. I have no idea who's behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying, listen to this, are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. This is what he's going to do, okay? This is his plan. Anything they do, obviously he didn't craft it, but his allies are crafting this for his potential second term. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them. So given who is crafting this, given that he's espousing plans that align with what they want to do, meaning even if he doesn't think he's for these things, if he doesn't think he's endorsed this exact plan, Project 2025, he's already committing to doing a bunch of the things in it. But I think the takeaway really is he gets that this is so unpopular. He gets that Americans are afraid of what could come of a second Trump term, in part because of the extra attention that's been given to Project 2025, which is, put simply, a plan for immediate big changes governmentally if a conservative president, when they originally started crafting it, but now Trump's going to be the Republican nominee. So if Trump gets into the office again, hit the ground running with XYZ plans that could fundamentally change the government. Here's my such reporting on this to give us more context. Donald Trump took to Truth Social this morning to denounce the controversial Project 2025 and disavow any association with it. Project 2025 emanated from the Heritage Foundation. It's a sweeping package of right-wing proposals to radically transform the government of the United States behind a strong executive. It proposes to fire tens of thousands of career civil servants by reclassifying them as political appointees. This would allow a Republican president to replace them with right-wing political hacks. And before going further, two elements of this. The first, conservatism, as it used to be, has just completely gone away in the Republican Party, apparently, because now their big motivation is we need to centralize control for the office of the presidency. This comes from, I should say, before going into that, they've realized democratically, they're struggling a lot. Whenever people in this country have their say, this MAGA ideology is not exactly popular. And so their hope is if we can just get someone in the White House and then centralize power there, then we can enact some of the things we want to. Then we can hold on to power more effectively. And relying on our entire government through our democratic process to go in the way they'd like, to not give in, as they would believe it to be, to the priorities of the radical left. That is a lot more difficult than centralizing control of the presidency. And so you've heard people like the president of the Heritage Foundation say that we need a strong executive, we need criminal immunity for a president, as the Supreme Court has now bolstered the dissent from Justice Sotomayor, saying this is putting a king above the law, saying that within their official powers they can't be held criminally accountable. And that's what Project 2025 also is supportive of. And then also, one of the reasons that Trump's first term wasn't as unstable as it could have been, even though it obviously was, but as it could have been throughout those years, is because the way that our government works is so much of the day-to-day of governance is done by people who are career civil servants, who are, while they have personal political views, I'm sure they are not political positions, and they serve through administrations, and they do so in a nonpartisan way. That's what Project 2025 is really pumped about getting rid of. Remove all those people who allow for this smooth governance and instead replace it with just Trump loyal people. And that could be disastrous. There are obvious Christian nationalist overtones, Midas continues, throughout the proposals, which also call for an erosion of the separation of church and state. The plan calls for the president to take more direct partisan control of federal agencies such as the DOJ, FBI, and Homeland Security. How do you think that would go? Not great. Presumably, this would allow presidents to use the power of the federal government against their political enemies, something Trump has promised to do in retribution. It also calls for the Department of Education to be abolished, because that's what we need. Less attention, investments, enhancements to education. The proposal also seeks to undo progress, no surprise, in social areas over the decades on gay marriage, contraception, and abortion access, and terminating DEI programs. It also recommends immediate mass deportations of migrants and their families. And it goes on to show the post we talked about and some other things. We'll move on to responses. Rick Wilson of the Lincoln Project wrote, Trump is strategically lying about Project 2025. He knows most of it polls about like Ebola. He knows his base doesn't care about nerd policy crap. Heritage has done the work, and every word in Project 2025 will be his policy. And again, when you're talking about taking more direct control over the DOJ instead of what we currently have, which is it tries to stay pretty independent from the president. The president isn't going in saying, do this, Attorney General. Trump has said he wants to direct his Attorney General to go after his political opponents. So even if he denounces the plan itself, he wants to do what's in it. Or we've seen Trump's stance toward education. He loved the idea of abolishing the Department of Education. Or his deep state rhetoric is all about removing key elements of the functioning of government in the name of combating the bureaucracy, but really to create no guardrails, to create no pushback in what he wants to enact. Then you have Jennifer Bendery saying all three of the guys behind Project 2025 worked in the White House for Trump when he was president, but he doesn't know anything. Ron Filipkowski says, Trump says, I don't even know the people who drafted Project 2025. Then you have a photo here of Trump with his director of White House personnel and architect of Project 2025, John McEntee, I think is how you pronounce that name. You have Jared Ryan Sears saying, that's how Trump works. Back an idea, and when it starts to work against him, pretend he never had anything to do with it. He did it with the extreme abortion bans, backpedaling once there was outrage, and Trump had plans for a national abortion ban, but now pretends he doesn't because it's unpopular. Would be nice for the news media to drive these points home, show how Trump actually does support these ideas, and highlight his many lies. And doing our best here. Trump distancing himself from Project 2025 tells you that he knows how unpopular his party's platforms are. Biden-Harris HQ pointing out that Trump's press secretary is literally starring in recruitment ads for Project 2025. Obviously, Trump has long had a close relationship with the Heritage Foundation.
Your organization is named the Heritage Foundation because you understand that our glorious heritage is the foundation of everything we hope to achieve, which is why we need the help of the Heritage Foundation and everyone here tonight to get our tax cuts through the House, through the Senate.
Yeah, and that was in pushing for those tax cuts. And before getting to Nicole Wallace discussing the gravity of Project 2025, sometimes I think people ponder, is Trump thinking about these things, strategy, thinking about how we hit the ground running on day one and working with people? Or is he just sort of stumbling into these things? Either way, I don't think it really matters, which is why I find that discussion not super valuable. Because what Trump wants so badly is power, and he wants retribution, and then he has some key bad ambitions. And he then surrounds himself with, as we see, again, was mentioned in a lot of these responses and people calling him out, that so many people who worked for Trump, who will work for Trump, allies of his, are the ones crafting this plan and working to make it something that will be implemented. And so while he has his motives, and the danger of him, it's sort of multiplied by the danger of the people he wants to surround himself with, the vision for the future of America that is grim, that relies on pushing people down in the interest of making others feel up higher, and that would get rid of even some key institutions, or get rid of many of the guardrails, like I mentioned, the independence of certain institutions from others, the checks on different institutions. All because, as we've gone through now a few times, it seems MAGA has come to believe that they can't necessarily do what they want to do and have power by just winning elections the normal way and winning through the democratic process sometimes where you build up enough power and you implement an agenda. They're so scared the left is going to win, and they see the left as something that is such a danger that now it's time to sacrifice some of these principles and sacrifice some of our institutions in the interest of, in this case, centralizing power on the president to do these things on their own. Hello, I know. Oh, why does he pause the video to ask people to subscribe just so quickly? To say, if you're not subscribed already, it does make a huge difference. If you appreciate the show, by clicking that subscribe button, you show it and you help us grow. Free, easy, but it makes a huge difference. Back to the video. Here's Nicole Wallace sounding the alarms about this as well.
No, it's not a game, and this is not a drill. Project 2025 is their plan. It is serious. It's in writing. It's public. It is a chilling approach to running our federal government that got all the more chilling after the Supreme Court granted Donald Trump absolute immunity. It's the plan that Trump would implement on day one should he prevail in the November election and end up back in the Oval Office. That was actress Taraji P. Henson delivering that warning during Sunday's BET Awards to make sure that her audience and all Americans wake up about what is truly at stake this November, a full-scale reimagining of our entire system of government and who runs it in Donald Trump's image and vision. The mission statement for Project 2025 is a plan assembled by the Heritage Foundation. Sounds like something you'd read on the ex-president's Truth Social feed, and there's no evidence to rebut that that's exactly where it came from. Quote, "It is not enough for conservatives to win elections. If we are going to rescue the country from the grip of the radical left, we need both a governing agenda and the right people in place, ready to carry this agenda out on day one of the next conservative administration." Axios has new reporting on what they describe as Trump's imperial presidency in waiting, writing this, quote, "Trump promises an unabashedly imperial presidency, one that would turn the Justice Department against critics, deport millions of people in the U.S. illegally, slap 10% tariffs on thousands of products, fire perhaps tens of thousands of government staff deemed insufficiently loyal. He'd stretch the powers of the presidency in ways not seen in our lifetime. He says this consistently and clearly, so it is not conjecture." A few other headlines from Project 2025's 900-page-plus mandate, putting Christianity at the center of American life and government, criminalizing the mailing of abortion medication, the most common form of abortion care, criminalizing sending that through the mail, taking the word abortion out of all laws, policies, and regulations, as well as terms relating to gender and sexual identity, removing protections for the environment, denying climate change, eliminating the Department of Education.
Yeah. So, again, he wants to deny it. Even if it's true that he isn't as closely associated with them, which I don't believe, as he is currently perceived to be, he's already said that stuff or alluded to it. And always, as I mentioned in our analysis, it's Trump plus the people he wants to surround himself with. The Steve Bannons, right? By the way, Trump posts on Truth Social this for 4th of July. Happy 4th of July to all, including, and then he does his normal thing. Do we have to our highly incapable president who uses prosecutors to go after his political opponent on to all of his things? He talks about Kamala Harris. He talks about deranged Jack Smith, etc., etc. And this is something he finds so silly. Any holiday, he says happy blank or Merry Christmas to, and then all the people that he hates. Just a very strange tradition for Trump. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. If you want to get the extra episode of the show daily and support the work that we do, you can do so by clicking the join button below.